Zach St. Anderson. Welcome to the Principal Podcast. What is one of the most valuable things that we can teach our children? Let me give you one thing to think about. What if we were to teach our children about how the world really works? And some of you may have your own ideas about how this is. Let me tell you one of mine, okay? I believe that principles control the consequences to our actions. Let me say that again. We can choose to do anything we want, but we do not control the consequence of our decision. What controls the consequences of our decisions? I believe principles do. Let me tell you what I mean. Gravity. Gravity is a scientific principle. Okay. Now we're going to talk about human relations principles in a bit, but let's talk about a scientific principle right now. Gravity is everywhere. It works here. It works where you're at. It works on the other side of the world. It works in Australia and Asia and North America, South America, Africa, Europe, North Pole, South Pole, everywhere. It works even out in outer space. I mean, it keeps the Earth going around the sun. It keeps the moon going around the Earth. Millions and millions of miles away, there are clusters of galaxies held together by gravity. Gravity's everywhere. Now, when you come in contact with gravity, which is everywhere, we have a couple of choices. We can either, one, align with it, or two, ignore it to our peril. So let's have some fun with this. How could we align with gravity to make us, we'll say, make us money? And while you're thinking about that, let me just give you one example. I sometimes visit Vail, Colorado. Now, why do people go to Vail, Colorado? Well, a lot of times people go to Vail to ski. In other words, they'll take a plane in or drive in, and they'll get to a hotel in Vail. Eventually, they'll get to a ski resort, and they'll take the lift up, and they'll have this great time skiing down in a beautiful area in Colorado. Now, you could say that the people in Vail have aligned with gravity because people literally are pulled down the mountain in this beautiful place, pulled down by gravity. So ski resorts is one way you could align with gravity. I've asked this question. I said, how else can you make money with gravity? And I hear people all over the country tell me things like this. They'll say, well, you could do a skydiving company, or you could build roller coasters, or you could do a zip line, or you could do a bungee jumping company. All of these things are ways that you can make money with gravity. Then my next question is, well, what happens if you ignore gravity or you're careless with gravity? What happens? And I had one person on the front row say splat. In other words, you could fall off a cliff and splat, right? So here's the thing. Gravity's here. It's where you're at. It's on the other side of the world. It's all over the universe. And if I respect gravity and align with gravity, I could maybe make millions of dollars with my ski resort, with my hydroelectric dam, my skydiving company. All of these things use gravity. Or I could be careless with gravity and I could fall off a cliff. Gravity itself doesn't change. What changes? My decision to either respect it and align with it or ignore it to my peril. Now, when we're teaching our children principles, we need to let them know there are principles in life that are just as real as gravity. And they're real whether we believe they are or not. Like, it doesn't matter if I believe in gravity or not. Can you imagine me saying I don't believe in gravity? I mean, I could go to the edge of the cliff and say, I believe I can fly, and jump off. And guess what? Gravity still controls the consequence of that choice. If I jump off the cliff without a parachute, I mean, there's other principles, aerodynamic principles like parachute or hang glide or something that can interact with gravity. But if I just jump off the cliff, my choice is governed by the principle of gravity. So if principles govern the consequences of our choices, it becomes really important to figure out what they are. What are the principles that govern a marriage? What are the principles that govern human relations? And here's a hint when it comes to principles. Principles are not the latest book. They're not the latest fad. They're not the latest social media something. Principles, just like gravity, when it comes to human relations, are ancient. They're timeless. They've been around a long time, and they're real whether you believe they are or not. Let me give you an example. Principle of honesty. Honesty is ancient, it's timeless. It's just going to tell the truth, right? Now, we can align with the principle of honesty, or we can ignore it. If we align with it and we tell the truth even when it's hard, people learn to trust us. They know that our words have power. If we tell a lie here or there, people learn that we can't be trusted. And it's almost like falling off a cliff versus building a ski resort, right? And I can tell you, even in business, something about this. I was working for a company once. This company had hundreds of things for sale on a website. And my job was to answer the phone. I was a salesperson. My job was to answer the phone and answer people's questions. Now, here's the thing. I was on straight commission, which means I didn't make an hourly rate. I only made money if somebody bought. Well, somebody called up on the phone and said, I'm thinking about buying this one particular product. And then this person asked me a really interesting question. They said, would you buy this one particular product from you? Now, I had a choice to make because I actually knew that you could buy the same product on Amazon for cheaper. And I told them that. I had a choice. Do I align with her or not? Well, luckily, I aligned with the principle of honesty on this. And I said, you know what? I know you can buy this product cheaper on Amazon. Just go on Amazon and buy it from them. You'll get the same thing and it'll get cheaper. Now, some people who are in sales might think I was crazy. But I don't, because I know it was a principle that's bigger than me. It's like gravity is way bigger than me. Here's the interesting thing. I lost that sale. They didn't buy from me on that particular product. But here's the interesting thing. By the end of that phone call, this person made an order that was many times more than this little thing they were asking about. They made a massive order, something else. I really think it was because they knew that I was a straight shooter and I would tell them the truth, because I told them the truth about this particular thing to go buy it on Amazon, don't buy it from us. There were other things I did feel good about selling them, that we did have good product on that felt like, and I told them that. But when you align with honesty, people trust you. And even if you have a short-term loss or are embarrassed because you have to admit something or make something right or do something like you should that you didn't do before, in the long run, you can't go wrong, because it's like having gravity on your side. Short run, things could go wrong. Long run, things don't go wrong. So how do we teach our kids honesty as a principle? How do we teach our children that the golden rule is a principle? We treat people like we want to be treated. We're respectful. We're kind. Now, here's the thing. The truth is, if we're trying to teach, there's this adage that says when we're trying to teach people, there's three things that are important: example, example, example. Now, for parents, that's the good news and that's the bad news, right? I mean, we have children that are watching us all the time. They see our example. Hopefully, we're trying our best to do a good example. And of course, sometimes we're going to mess up. And it's okay for us to be able to say, hey, look, you know what? I didn't do that very well, and I need to make it better. And I'm going to try to be better, and be willing to admit that we made a mistake, because that allows our children to say, hey, wait, if I'm not perfect, that's okay. My dad wasn't perfect. My mom wasn't perfect. They made a mistake, and we can make it better. But what are the principles? Principles like kindness, principles like integrity, principles like honesty, the golden rule. Now, I've said this before. The problems we see in our society are not things that the government can fix. They're things that have to be fixed at a different level. I mean, if there's not enough good parents, there will never be enough policemen. I think Neil A. Maxwell said that. We don't have good parents who step up while children are young and say, hey, look, let's be honest. Let's be kind. Let's treat people right. Later on, decades later, we see the results of that. And we're seeing a lot of the results like that in our world today. So I'm asking parents, anyone who's listening to this, to say, how can I stop right now, take the opportunity I have right now to influence my children for good by teaching them timeless, ancient principles? What an opportunity we have to do that. Thanks for joining today. This is Xane on the Principle Podcast.
Thank you so much for joining the Principle Podcast. I'm so glad that you listened and took the time. You know, I'm on a mission to help as many marriages and families as I possibly can. I would love to hear from you. You know, things that keep you up at night, that concern you about your family, your marriage, and things we could talk about on the Principle Podcast. If you like the podcast, please like, subscribe, You can check out my book on Amazon. It's called What I Want My Children to Know Before I Die. And again, thank you for supporting the podcast.